This grandma throwing eggs at the riot police, it's becoming quite iconic. This protest happening over the last few days, March 17th to 18th, and now the 19th, has been because of local officials wanting to illegally build a cremation center in the town of Xinyi in southern Guangdong province. Local residents went onto the streets to protest in front of the government building. Some of them basically demanding that this order be retracted, and came out the next day. Residents revealed that the local government deceived these people by claiming that the land was being used to build new road. Expecting that, they were told that the actual construction was for a crematorium. So the selected site for the crematorium is located less than half a mile away in terms of straight distance from a nearby village, even closer to another village, and also pretty close to a nearby primary school. And many of these crematoriums are not following safety regulations. For example, a 2013 Chinese state media report in December cited research indicating that in some areas surrounding crematoriums in China, levels of dioxins and heavy metal were found to be relatively high. It notes that dioxins, which are produced during combustion processes, have been linked to increasing risks of cancer, such as leukemia. So, these cremation centers in China, it's very profitable. That's why the local governments want to build a lot of them. In many places, they're quasi-monopoly business, essentially tied to the local government. You know how China's economy is right now. They're running out of things to make money on, so they're trying to force people to go into cremation when their loved ones die rather than a burial. And obviously, because demand in China in this area is guaranteed, since it has an aging population, a huge number of people, and the normal funeral service now in most places is followed by a cremation rather than a burial. So a lot of these crematoriums are operated directly by the local governments, which means extra steady flow of cash to the local government. In fact, last November, protesters in Guizhou province came out against a mandate to cremate their loved ones over burial. Again, because the money, you can't make that when you bury someone in the ground. And so the provincial government is basically forcing people who have been buried to be dug out and then be cremated, which is quite offensive because you're so desperate for money that you're literally violating the dead. And the protesters even said that if the Communist Party is digging up ancestors' graves, so go dig up Xi Jinping's ancestral tombs first. Yeah, pretty crazy. Take a listen. In that area, many ethnic groups have this custom over the years to bury their loved ones, and they, this is not how they do things, right? So this caused many protests across the region in different areas last year. But I think the main thing with this protest is not necessarily that the residents hate the idea of cremation. It's that they were fooled into believing that the local government was trying to do good by improving their lives with a new set of roads. So again, they were there 17th and 18th, but on the 19th they returned with the riot police standing in front of the government building. The residents threw things like fruits, veggies, rocks, and eggs at the police. And videos here we see have actually been deleted in China. They were just sent and found published in platforms like X. So because most protests nowadays in China end pretty quickly, I don't expect this one to last more than today or tomorrow, really. The local government, they found a way to basically catch some of the individuals who are supposedly the leader of the protest. They'll block all the roads off, and they'll keep the size as small as possible for the number of people in there. They'll run at them with the riot police, and I've covered a few of these. But I think what's worth noting now is the frequency of these and how easy or how spontaneous people are willing to come together for this, right? So after the pandemic, this really became the thing. So people often are forced to leave quickly, but they still come out, and the clarity of the protesters is also quite interesting in the sense that they really know what they want. They're not just wandering around. So it's a very targeted, concentrated little protests that happen in pockets of areas in China. Now, if this gets much bigger, obviously it becomes a huge issue for the CCP, right? So this happened in the same province 12 years ago, this exact same scenario. So this area in this story is south of the one that happens as we speak. Residents in this area in Huazhou City came out protesting a crematorium construction, and they actually successfully prevented the building. At the time, the scale was in the tens of thousands of residents, and then so they stopped that in 2014, but then by 2019, the local government tried to do the same thing again by lying to residents that the city's announced plan to build a humanistic ecology park and obtained villagers' consent for land use was without mentioning the fact that the project would include a crematorium. And it wasn't until November that year, during a public risk assessment notice, that the project title was revised to explicitly include a funeral facility, which led to accusations that authorities had been lying to the residents this entire time. And because there's some stigma around crematoriums, obviously. So the residents, again, came out and protested, clash broke out, and police blocked these demonstrators and basically stopped them from going to the government building. And then, a lot of cars were turned over, police used warning shots, tear gas, water cannons, all of these things to try to disperse the crowd, multiple injuries. And the following day, the government announced that they were suspending the project, and on December 1st, they actually said that they would not build one in that town. But tensions resurfaced literally in 2 weeks after that in a town nearby that, because residents suspected that they simply moved the plan to build the crematorium from one town to another. And so they protested. Because this time they were saying that it was a waste treatment plant, but it was actually a cover, again, for the crematorium. So because, it's a lucrative business for the local authorities, and it just gets more troublesome now because they're running out of different ways to get money. So it seems like they're more focused on doing this now, right? I don't know if there is some indications that there's another sort of a virus coming in, given the fact that, yes, crematoriums were being built everywhere in China during COVID, right? But this time, I'm not so sure yet, unless there's something dramatic happening, So yeah, these guys have a history down there of protesting against the crematoriums being built, which I find pretty interesting given the fact that, people always say that the people in the northern part of China are more brave, or more willing to, shed blood for freedom, right? Throughout the dynasties in history. But so far, what we've seen is the people down south have more spines and they're more willing to fight for that little tiny bit of the control that they can still hold on to. Yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments about this topic, and if you think that this protest will last much longer or not. Thanks for watching this time, and we'll see you in the next one.